Flight attendant snatches black teen's ticket. One call later, the whole team gets replaced. Imagine standing at the gate, passport in hand, eager to board the flight that promises to lead you toward your dreams, only to have it all come crashing down because of someone else's prejudice. In a single charged moment, a flight attendant snatches away a black teen's ticket, hurling accusations that no one saw coming. Passengers freeze. Tension chokes the air. And just when all hope seems lost, one phone call sets off a chain of events that shakes the entire airline to its core. This is the story of how injustice meets its match, and how karma ensures no one escapes consequences. Ebony Johnson could still hear her mother's voice echoing in her head as she made her way through the bustling corridors of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Be brave and be polite. Always carry yourself with dignity no matter what others do. This was her first solo flight, a coming-of-age moment that felt electrifying and nerve-wracking all at once. 16 years old, with a bright smile and determined eyes, Ebony was on her way to Los Angeles for a youth innovation camp sponsored by a tech giant. She clutched the handle of her small carry-on as she navigated toward Gate C-21, occasionally checking the overhead signs. The announcements crackled in the background. Last call for Flight 1453 to Dallas. Please proceed to Gate A9. The airport was a swirl of faces, people from every walk of life streaming past. Business travelers in suits typed furiously on laptops. Families herded children excitedly talking about Disney vacations, and international tourists studied signs with wide-eyed curiosity. Ebony had always found airports fascinating, microcosms of the world brought under one roof. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, Delilah Johnson, read, "Remember to text me before you board. Love you, baby." Ebony smiled, the flicker of anxiety replaced by a surge of gratitude for having such a supportive parent. She typed back, "Will do, love you too," and hit send just as she approached the gate. The Delta flight to Los Angeles was set to leave in an hour. Ebony arrived early to be safe. The waiting area looked standard. Rows of black vinyl chairs, a small kiosk offering overpriced snacks, and a handful of power outlets with people jostling for space to charge their devices. She spotted a free chair near a window and settled in, carefully tucking her bag under the seat. A quick glance around revealed a mixture of travelers, some older, some younger, a few families, and a large group of college students wearing matching sweatshirts from the University of Georgia, presumably traveling together. The occasional child with a teddy bear or a tablet in hand trotted behind tired-looking parents. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Ebony listened to music through one earbud, the other ear tuned in to boarding announcements. That's when she noticed a flight attendant striding toward the gate counter. Tall and poised, with meticulously pinned-up blonde hair, the woman carried herself like an overseer of the skies. The name on her ID badge read Beatrice McAllister. Beatrice's eyes swept the seating area like a hawk scanning a field for prey. Though Ebony couldn't put a finger on it, a chill rippled through her as their gazes briefly met. Ebony quickly shifted her focus back to her phone. She always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, but there was something about Beatrice's piercing stare that made her feel uneasy. The flight attendant disappeared behind the gate counter and began typing away at a computer terminal. Ebony relaxed again, letting her mind drift to thoughts of the camp in Los Angeles. She had been chosen out of hundreds of applicants. She was going to meet some of the brightest young innovators in the country. A thrill of excitement coursed through her. She was also supposed to meet her father's cousin, Aunt Gloria, in L.A. Gloria had promised to show her around Hollywood if Ebony arrived a day early. Somewhere in her daydream, Ebony realized she was a little thirsty. She got up and grabbed her phone and ticket, leaving her carry-on beneath the seat. A brief trip to the nearby water fountain and maybe a vending machine for a snack. She figured her bag would be safe in the crowded gate area. Within a minute, she was back at Gate C-21, sipping water from a plastic bottle and nibbling on a small bag of pretzels. Her ticket and phone were in her hand, the phone occasionally buzzing with social media alerts. That's when she saw Beatrice again, now in a heated conversation with another gate agent. Ebony couldn't hear the details, but she noticed the flight attendant's sharp gestures and the agent's appeasing smiles. Whatever the dispute, it ended with the agent nodding vigorously as Beatrice stormed away. Ebony couldn't help but notice the tension. The overhead speakers dinged. "Attention, passengers for Delta Flight 2745 to Los Angeles. We will begin pre-boarding shortly for passengers needing extra time and families with small children." Ebony collected her carry-on and approached the line forming at the gate. Her ticket was an economy seat, but she had purchased priority boarding with some extra allowance her mother gave her. So she stood in the Zone 1 line, feeling proud to have a bit of a head start on seating. The excitement was tangible. She was about to step onto the plane that would carry her to one of her biggest adventures yet. Just as the gate agent began scanning tickets, Ebony noticed Beatrice creeping closer. The flight attendant's gaze flickered toward Ebony. A strange, disapproving frown tugged at her lips. Ebony felt her stomach tighten. She clung to her ticket, determined not to let anyone spoil her mood. This was her moment. She was next in line. The gate agent, a woman with kind eyes named Margot, offered her a warm smile. "Hi there. May I see your boarding pass?" Ebony smiled back and handed it over. Everything happened in a flash. Margot reached for the boarding pass, but before she could scan it, Beatrice's hand swooped in, snatching the ticket right out of Ebony's grasp. Ebony's eyes went wide, and a jolt of shock and confusion rippled through the line of waiting passengers. Murmurs erupted behind her. Beatrice stared at the ticket, lips pursed in disapproval. "We've had issues with fraudulent boarding passes," she announced loudly, glancing not at Margot but at Ebony. "I need to verify this thoroughly." Margot blinked, her expression stunned. "Beatrice, I already verified it in the system. It should be fine." But Beatrice ignored her. She pressed the ticket firmly against the scanner, her eyes never leaving Ebony's face. Ebony felt an unmistakable wave of hostility, something she'd encountered before in smaller ways. Shopkeepers following her around, older folks clutching their purses tighter in elevators. But never in so public a situation. Never at an airport gate with so many eyes on her. A hush fell over the crowd. The beep from the scanner confirmed Ebony's ticket was valid, but Beatrice didn't return it. Instead, she marched to the side, fiddled with a computer, and said, "I need to make a call." With Ebony's ticket still in her hand, she abruptly disappeared behind a partition, leaving Ebony standing at the gate counter, stunned. Margot tried to intervene. "Beatrice, that's not protocol. Beatrice—" But Beatrice was already gone. Margot turned her apologetic gaze to Ebony. "I'm so sorry, dear. I've never seen her act like that. Please wait here for a moment. I'll sort this out." Ebony swallowed the wave of anger and humiliation threatening to boil over. She could feel all eyes on her, the sympathetic looks from some passengers, curious glances from others. A few hushed conversations rippled through the group. Ebony inhaled slowly, telling herself to stay calm. Yet she couldn't dismiss the sinking feeling in her gut. Deep down, she knew exactly why her ticket had been singled out. This was more than just protocol or a random check. The color of her skin had made her a target, and the flight attendant's expression made it painfully clear this was personal. Ebony looked around for support, for anyone who might step in. To her relief, a middle-aged black woman with short curly hair, who had witnessed the entire exchange, stepped forward. She gently placed a hand on Ebony's shoulder and offered a kind, reassuring nod. Ebony felt a rush of gratitude. She wouldn't be alone in this. Little did she know that this humiliating moment was only the beginning, a spark that would ignite a chain reaction, reaching the very top of the airline's management. And before the day was over, that one call Ebony's mother always promised she'd make in times of dire need would bring about a reckoning no one at Gate C-21 could have anticipated. Margot, the gate agent, immediately tried to rectify the situation. She typed furiously into her terminal, scanning Ebony's passport details that had been pre-entered. "It's all here," she muttered, frustration coloring her voice. She offered Ebony an apologetic glance. "Your boarding pass is legitimate. I don't know what Beatrice is doing, but let me handle it." Passengers in line grew restless. A few called out, "What's the holdup?" Others craned their necks, curious about the hold on Ebony's ticket. As Ebony stood there, trying to remain composed, she felt an older man in a tweed jacket nudge her arm. "Don't worry, kid," he whispered. "We saw what happened. That lady was out of line." Ebony nodded, forcing a grateful smile. When Beatrice finally returned, she held the boarding pass with a cool, dismissive air. Without acknowledging Ebony, she set the ticket down on the counter. "We've got the all clear now," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But instead of simply returning the boarding pass, Beatrice slid it back toward Ebony with a slow, condescending motion, as though she were doing Ebony a grand favor. Margot clearly struggled to maintain her professionalism. "Beatrice, may I speak with you privately?" she asked, standing from her seat at the computer. Beatrice waved her off. "No need, Margot," she said, and then turned to Ebony. "You can board now," she added sharply. Her tone carried the unspoken words, "Don't you try anything else." Ebony felt a mix of relief and anger, but she didn't want to cause more of a scene. She picked up her ticket and silently proceeded to the jetway. Just before stepping through, she noticed the cluster of travelers behind her, their faces contorted in discomfort at what they had witnessed. A few gave her supportive nods, others hurriedly looked away. Inside the jetway, Ebony's heart pounded. Her hands trembled as she clutched her phone. The magnitude of the moment hit her. She was just a teenager excited to attend a camp, and she had been publicly humiliated for no reason but the color of her skin. She wondered if she should message her mother. After all, Delilah Johnson was not one to stay silent when her daughter faced injustice. But Ebony hesitated. She didn't want to worry her mom unnecessarily if everything was resolved. Once on the plane, Ebony located her seat. 14A, a window seat in Economy Plus. She stowed her carry-on overhead and sank into her seat, exhaling. The plane's interior was a standard Boeing 737. Cramped rows, overhead bins, the faint odor of stale coffee and recirculated air. Usually she found the experience exciting, her chance to take wing and see the country. Now, she only felt anxious. The cabin began filling with passengers. A family with 2 young kids settled into the row behind her. Across the aisle, a pair of college students argued amiably about who would take the middle seat. The general hum of conversation and the rumble of carry-ons being shoved overhead resumed. Ebony busied herself with her phone, checking social media to calm her nerves. Moments later, she sensed someone standing in the aisle beside her. She glanced up to see the same older black woman who had placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The woman smiled warmly. "Glad you made it on board," she said. "I was hoping that flight attendant wasn't going to pull something crazy." Ebony nodded, her throat feeling tight. "Thank you for speaking up earlier," she managed. "I really appreciate it." The woman sighed. "I'm just sorry you had to go through that. My name is Sandra, by the way. Sandra Clark. And you are—" "Ebony," she replied. "That's a lovely name, Ebony. Remember to stay strong," Sandra said, looking around the cabin. "We might have to keep our eyes open. People like that flight attendant sometimes look for an excuse to escalate situations." Ebony felt reassured by Sandra's kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll try to stay calm." Sandra gave Ebony's shoulder a final pat. "That's right. Let's hope this flight goes smoothly." Then Sandra moved on down the aisle to her seat, leaving Ebony with a bittersweet sense of solidarity. As Ebony looked toward the front of the plane, she spotted Beatrice floating through the aisles with a frosty air, checking overhead bins. Beatrice shot Ebony a glance but quickly moved on. Ebony tried to ignore her. She slipped her phone out again and typed a text to her mother. "Boarded the plane. Everything okay? We'll explain later." She paused, then tapped send. As the last passengers boarded, Ebony gazed out the window, the airport's lights flickering against the late afternoon sky. The seatbelt sign pinged above, time for departure. But Ebony's heart remained uneasy. Once the cabin door closed, the safety announcements began. Beatrice took center stage at the front of the plane, reciting the usual instructions with mechanical precision. Her voice was clipped, betraying subtle annoyance. Ebony's stomach churned, recalling how that very voice had practically spat accusations at her. When the announcement ended, the plane's engines roared to life. It taxied to the runway in a slow, steady crawl before accelerating with a sudden jolt. Ebony felt the comforting force of gravity as they lifted off, Atlanta's sprawl receding below her window. At cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign blinked off, and people began to relax. Ebony tried to distract herself with the in-flight magazine and the small entertainment screen on the back of the seat in front of her. She found a movie, an action flick starring one of her favorite actresses, and hit play, hoping to escape the tension that kept gnawing at her. But then Beatrice started her in-flight beverage service. With a forced smile and tight-lipped politeness, she moved down the aisle taking orders. Ebony's row was next. The idea of seeing Beatrice up close again made Ebony's skin prickle. She braced herself. Beatrice reached the row in front of Ebony, handing out cups of soda and water, each with a practiced flick of the wrist. The flight attendant's composure seemed to return, at least on the surface. Then she turned to Ebony. "What would you like to drink?" she asked, her voice lacking any warmth. Ebony mustered her courage. "May I have a ginger ale, please?" Beatrice's eyes flashed. She poured the ginger ale with mechanical efficiency, letting the fizz settle before thrusting the cup at Ebony. A small trickle of ginger ale sloshed over the rim, dripping onto Ebony's hand. "Oh," Ebony said softly as she tried to wipe it with a napkin. Beatrice didn't offer an apology. Instead, she stared for a moment, then continued down the aisle. Ebony sensed a ripple of disapproval from the row behind her, likely Sandra noticing the flight attendant's rudeness. Ebony wiped her hand, frustration and hurt swirling inside her. She reminded herself, "Just stay calm, Ebony. Don't give her a reason to make things worse." Gradually, the plane fell into the usual mid-flight lull. Some passengers slept, others read or played on their phones. Ebony tried her best to watch her movie, but her mind kept replaying what had happened at the gate. She knew people like Beatrice existed. She just hadn't expected such a brazen display of discrimination right in front of everyone. Halfway through the flight, Ebony felt a pang of hunger. She rummaged through her carry-on, retrieving a small sandwich her mom had packed. As she ate, she heard hushed voices from across the aisle. The college students, apparently upset about something, were whispering in urgent tones. She caught a few phrases, "totally unacceptable," and "I saw the whole thing at the gate." They were talking about Beatrice. Ebony swallowed nervously. She began to realize that the flight attendant's behavior had not gone unnoticed by many. Little pockets of passengers were quietly murmuring their disapproval, and Ebony, uncertain what to do next, felt a small flame of hope flicker in her chest. Perhaps the support of these strangers could lead to some justice. Then, an unexpected incident brought the tension to a head. One of the overhead bins near Ebony's row suddenly popped open, sending a small, rolling bag tumbling to the aisle. The bag knocked into a younger passenger's arm before hitting the floor with a thud. Startled gasps erupted, and a few people stood up to help. Beatrice rushed over. "Stay seated," she barked. "I'll handle this." Her voice was stern, but Ebony noticed her eyes darting around, perhaps worried that the incident would reflect poorly on her. She grabbed the bag and shoved it back into the bin, snapping it shut. The young passenger, rubbing his arm, spoke up. "It's not locked in properly. I think it belongs to the lady in 13A. Sure enough, the woman in seat 13A timidly raised her hand. "That's my bag. I thought I'd stowed it well. I'm so sorry." Beatrice tightened her lips. "Make sure it's properly secured in the future," she hissed, her tone implying that she held the passenger fully responsible. "Some people don't know how to follow simple instructions." Her glance flickered almost imperceptibly toward Ebony before she moved on. Ebony stiffened. Did Beatrice just insinuate that she was the problem, or was she simply lashing out at everyone now? Either way, Ebony felt her blood simmer. She flipped open her phone and typed a quick message to her mother. "Mom, something weird is going on. Flight attendant singled me out at the gate, took my ticket. She's acting super racist. Others seem to notice." Trying to stay calm but feeling uneasy. She hesitated before hitting send. Then she remembered Delilah's words. If you ever feel unsafe or threatened, let me know. I'll do whatever it takes to protect you. Ebony knew her mother meant every word, so she pressed send and a wave of relief followed. Even if Delilah couldn't do anything from miles away, Ebony felt better having shared her predicament. The rest of the flight dragged on. Beatrice continued her rounds with forced courtesy, ignoring Ebony altogether. Ebony sat quietly, finishing her movie but hardly absorbing any of it. When the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Ebony felt an odd sense of anticipation. She was eager to put her feet on solid ground and leave this flight behind. But she also worried about facing Beatrice one last time during deplaning. Yet Ebony had no idea that her mother had already received her text, and Delilah Johnson was not the kind of woman to ignore her daughter's cry for help. The plane landed at Los Angeles International Airport with a slight bump, rolling across the tarmac. As soon as the seatbelt sign turned off, passengers sprang into action, pulling out carry-ons from the overhead bins. Ebony stayed seated, waiting for the commotion to die down. She glanced at her phone and saw a text from her mother. I'm calling Delta's corporate helpline right now. I'm not letting them get away with this. Ebony's pulse quickened. Her mother was indeed a force to be reckoned with, a paralegal who knew her way around civil rights laws and airline policies. Ebony hoped her mother's intervention wouldn't escalate matters too far, but at the same time, she felt grateful for the backup. Finally, Ebony rose to collect her bag. She took a calming breath, stepping into the aisle behind the line of impatient passengers inching toward the exit. Beatrice stood by the door, thanking each traveler with a tight smile, but Ebony noticed the flight attendant's eyes flickered with what appeared to be dread. Word must have gotten around. Perhaps a passenger had already lodged a complaint, or maybe Beatrice felt Ebony's glare. The teen debated whether to say anything as she passed. When Ebony reached the doorway, Beatrice opened her mouth as if to speak but then hesitated. She plastered on a mechanical smile. Have a good day, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Ebony offered a curt nod, stepping past her without a word. In that moment, Ebony realized that no matter how Beatrice acted, Ebony could retain her own dignity. She refused to be reduced to anger alone. Stepping onto the jetway, Ebony inhaled the stale but different air, relieved to be off that plane. As she made her way to the terminal, she passed Sandra, who gave her a reassuring thumbs up. The older woman mouthed, "Be strong." Ebony smiled in return. As soon as she emerged into the bustling LAX concourse, Ebony's phone buzzed. Another text from her mother. I got through. I spoke with a supervisor. They were horrified. They are investigating now. A wave of relief and apprehension flooded Ebony. She found a quiet corner near a Starbucks kiosk and dialed her mother. After one ring, Delilah answered. Ebony, baby, are you all right? Ebony exhaled, feeling the tension in her voice. I'm okay, Mom. I'm off the plane now. Delilah's tone crackled with controlled anger. I told them everything you texted me. They're launching an internal investigation. Apparently, there have been other complaints about this flight attendant. But this time, they can't ignore it. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm going to push this until we get a real apology. Ebony's heart fluttered. Are you sure this won't cause more problems for me? Don't you worry, Ebony. You focus on your camp and your dreams. I'll handle this. Delta's corporate office is taking it seriously. They promised to follow up with me. You've got your Aunt Gloria in LA, right? Yes, she's picking me up soon. Good. Text me once you're settled. And remember, you did nothing wrong. Ebony felt tears threatening to spill over. Thanks, Mom, she whispered. Love you. Hanging up, Ebony felt a strange sense of empowerment wash over her. Maybe this time justice would be served. She pulled her rolling bag behind her, heading toward the baggage claim where Aunt Gloria was waiting. Ebony Johnson stepped out of the terminal at Los Angeles International Airport, her heart still pounding from the events that had unfolded mere hours earlier. The sky outside was a pale, hazy blue, typical of early evening in LA, and the air felt warmer and drier than Atlanta. Despite having landed safely, she couldn't shake the prickling anxiety left behind by the racist encounter on her flight. She wove past throngs of travelers and chauffeurs holding signs, scanning the crowd for Aunt Gloria, a relative she'd met only a handful of times, but one who carried a certain mystique in the family. Finally, Ebony spotted a tall, elegant figure in a bright orange dress standing near the baggage claim exit. Gloria Underwood, her father's cousin, exuded a commanding presence, as though the entire airport was her personal stage. Long silver hoop earrings swayed with each graceful step she took, and her auburn curls framed her face, glowing in the Californian sunlight. A broad smile spread across Gloria's lips the moment she locked eyes on Ebony. She waved enthusiastically, nearly tipping the wide-brimmed sun hat perched atop her head. Ebony hastened her pace, rolling her carry-on behind her. "My goodness, look at you, girl!" Gloria exclaimed, sweeping Ebony into a hug that smelled of jasmine perfume. The warmth and familiarity in Gloria's voice took Ebony by surprise. In that instant she felt a wave of relief, as if all the tension from the flight had begun to dissolve into her aunt's embrace. "I'm so happy to see you," Ebony murmured, her voice trembling with lingering stress. She hadn't realized how tightly wound she was until she felt her aunt's comforting presence. Pulling back, Gloria scanned Ebony's face. Her eyes softened as she took in her niece's troubled expression. "You're starving, aren't you?" She didn't even wait for Ebony to confirm before adding, "I can see it. And you look worried, like the weight of the world's on your shoulders." She gently squeezed Ebony's hand. "Let's grab some real food and you can tell me everything." They walked through the crowded terminal, navigating the swirl of people. Gloria led Ebony to a small cafe tucked beside a bustling corridor near the exit. As they slipped into a corner booth, Ebony noticed the decor: bright green walls, chalkboard menus touting organic salads and overpriced sandwiches, and pendant lights that cast a soft glow on the polished concrete floor. Outside, arrivals and departures were announced every few seconds, a steady hum that underscored the constant movement in one of the world's busiest airports. Gloria insisted on ordering for both of them, choosing 2 grilled chicken paninis and a pair of iced teas. The moment the server left, Gloria folded her hands on the table, her silver bracelets clinking softly. "So," she said, fixing Ebony with a keen, unwavering gaze, "I can tell something is off. Your mother told me you had an incident on the plane, but I want to hear it from you." Ebony took a breath, still feeling the sting of tears behind her eyes. She'd been holding herself together since the gate fiasco in Atlanta. Now the exhaustion from the journey and the emotional stress started to weigh heavily on her. "Aunt Gloria, it was awful," she began, her voice almost a whisper. "This flight attendant, her name was Beatrice, acted like I wasn't supposed to be on the flight at all. She literally snatched my ticket from my hand at the gate and accused me of having a fraudulent boarding pass even though everything was legit." Gloria's eyebrows arched high, and her lips pressed into a thin line. She said nothing yet, just let Ebony continue. "It felt so humiliating," Ebony went on. "People were staring, but at the same time, I could tell some folks wanted to help. Eventually, the gate agent intervened, but Beatrice just walked off with my ticket. When she came back, she looked at me like I'd committed some crime. Even on the plane, she was rude and dismissive, like she couldn't stand the fact I was even there." The server arrived with their iced teas, setting them down carefully. Ebony paused, taking a sip of the cold drink, hoping it would soothe her parched throat. Across from her, Gloria's expression had shifted from concern to something sharper, a quiet fury that Ebony had never quite seen in her mother or any other family member. It was as though Gloria channeled the rage of all the women in their lineage who had ever faced injustice. "I'm so sorry you went through that, baby girl," Gloria said, her voice low, almost trembling with anger. "Racism shows up in ugly ways, especially when people think they're in a position of power. And that's exactly what happened here. That flight attendant had power over you, And she used it to humiliate you because of the color of your skin. Ebony nodded. She appreciated hearing it stated so plainly. Part of her still wrestled with the nagging question. Could it really be about race? Maybe she just had a bad day. But deep down, Ebony knew the truth. She'd seen the accusing glint in Beatrice's eyes, the silent message that Ebony didn't belong. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping their teas until their paninis arrived. Ebony realized how hungry she was. She hadn't had a decent meal since leaving Atlanta. She took a few bites and felt her body relax as the food provided some semblance of comfort. Gloria tapped her painted nails on the table. You must be exhausted, but we're not going to let this slide. Your mom told me she's already contacted Delta's corporate office. Is that right? Yeah, Ebony said, swallowing another bite. She said they're investigating. People on the flight even recorded the gate incident. There's a video going around on social media. At this, Gloria let out a humorless laugh. Well, good. Sometimes a scandal is the only way to force these companies to address racism seriously. The worst they can do is try to bury it, but if there's video evidence, they'll have a hard time ignoring it. A flicker of pride sparked in Ebony's chest. She had always known Aunt Gloria was a force. Her mother often said so, but seeing that unwavering resolve in person was something else entirely. It's all been so fast, Ebony murmured. 1 minute, I was worried about traveling alone for the first time. The next, I'm part of a viral post about racism on an airline. Gloria reached across the table, placing her hand gently over Ebony's. I know it's a lot, and you deserve to enjoy your time here. This camp is a big opportunity for you, and you shouldn't have to spend your days dealing with corporate nonsense. Let me help. Gloria carefully placed her sandwich down, then rummaged through her large, stylish tote bag for her phone. With deft fingers, she flicked through her contacts. Ebony watched curiously. Her aunt's expression had taken on a purposeful set, as though she were on a mission. Bradley. There he is, Gloria muttered, tapping the screen. She raised the phone to her ear and paused, meeting Ebony's eyes. I have a friend in PR, she explained. He works closely with airlines whenever they face big media crises. Let's see if we can apply some added pressure to get real accountability, not just a half-hearted apology. Ebony had never even considered that her aunt might have such connections. She felt a sudden swirl of gratitude, tinged with the same anxious energy that had followed her all day. Part of her worried about stirring the pot further. Would this make Delta retaliate? But another part of her recognized that letting it blow over might encourage people like Beatrice to continue mistreating others. Gloria's phone call connected. Ebony heard a deep male voice on the other end, though she couldn't make out the words. Gloria spoke with crisp efficiency. Brad, it's Gloria Underwood. Listen, I have a situation. My niece was just racially targeted by a Delta flight attendant. Yes, I'm serious. We have video footage too, and a complaint has already been filed. I need to ensure they don't sweep this under the rug. Can you reach out to your contacts in Delta's PR department? Make sure they understand the gravity of this situation. She paused, listening intently, then continued. Yes, the entire flight's passengers saw it. Absolutely. Perfect, thanks, Brad. Gloria ended the call with a decisive tap, setting the phone on the table. He's going to make some calls, she said simply. Delta won't be able to sidestep this. If they try, Brad will alert some of the media outlets he's connected to. Suddenly it becomes a bigger headline. Ebony's heart thudded in her chest. I appreciate it, Aunt Gloria, she said softly. I never asked to be the face of anything. I was just trying to get to LA for this camp. Gloria's expression softened, and she reached across to brush a stray lock of Ebony's hair away from her forehead. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes life chooses you for these moments, whether you want it or not. It's not fair and it's not right, but if there's a silver lining, it's that you can help expose something that too many black travelers face all the time. Ebony chewed on her lower lip, nodding in understanding. At least I'm not alone, she thought. Her mother had her back, her aunt had her back, and apparently a wave of social media support was beginning to grow. That knowledge brought a measure of peace she had not felt since the humiliating scene at Gate C-21. By the time they finished their sandwiches, Ebony noticed that her arms no longer felt tense, and her chest didn't feel as tight. A subtle sense of relief settled over her. She realized she had Aunt Gloria's unwavering support, and that, combined with her mother's fierceness, gave her hope that something good might come of this. They paid the bill and made their way toward the parking structure. The day's last light filtered through the tall windows, casting geometric patterns across the floor. Gloria walked with a confident stride, Ebony by her side, luggage rolling behind them. For a moment, Ebony caught sight of her own reflection in the glass walls. A young black girl, hair neatly braided, eyes weary but resolute, standing next to a woman who embodied elegance and defiance in equal measure. Out in the parking garage, Gloria led her to a sleek red sedan. As they loaded Ebony's luggage into the trunk, Ebony felt the phone vibrate in her pocket. She pulled it out to see a message from her mother. "Keep me updated. So proud of you. I love you." Ebony swallowed the sudden lump in her throat, typing back, "Aunt Gloria is on it. Love you too." Once inside the car, Gloria put the key in the ignition, and a smooth R&B tune filled the space. She turned to Ebony with a warm smile. "Now let's get you settled in. Then maybe we can talk about something more fun, like the Hollywood sights we'll see tomorrow, or that big innovation camp you're so excited about." Ebony managed a grin. Despite the day's trauma, she felt a flicker of excitement about the days to come. Her camp, the project she'd been refining for weeks, the chance to meet other bright teens from across the country. "I'd like that," she said softly, fastening her seatbelt. Gloria pulled out of the parking spot, gliding down the ramps of LAX's labyrinthine garage. As they merged into the flow of Los Angeles traffic, Ebony leaned her head against the window, thinking about how drastically her day had changed. She had walked onto that plane as an eager 16-year-old looking forward to a life-changing camp, and had walked off it as the unwilling figure in a possible legal and social media battle. Yet she wasn't alone. In the end, Ebony realized that the people who cared about her, the mother who would fight for her, and the aunt who had surprising connections, were exactly the allies she needed to face what lay ahead. They drove on, the neon-lit highway stretching out before them, Louisiana's skyline shimmering in the distance. Ebony's mind whirred with a mixture of apprehension and newfound confidence, but a single thought kept surfacing. I'm going to be okay. Because no matter how big this would become, and it would become big, she could feel it now, her family had her back, and that was enough to give her the courage to meet this challenge head-on. In an unremarkable corporate building in Atlanta, far from the glitz and chaos of LAX, a phone call was reverberating through Delta's management chain. Delilah Johnson had spoken with a supervisor who, upon learning about the disturbing allegations, escalated it to higher-ups in HR and customer relations. Soon, a chain email circulated among department heads. Urgent. Racial discrimination incident. Flight 2745. At first, it was just another complaint. But then more details trickled in. Margot, the gate agent at C-21, had already filed an incident report about Beatrice's unusual conduct. Several passengers posted on social media about the blatant racism they witnessed. Posts on Twitter included, "Witnessed horrifying racism on my Delta flight. Teen singled out for no reason. And at Delta, you need to handle your staff's prejudice. Unacceptable." The story began to gain traction, retweeted and shared, inching toward virality. Behind closed doors, a crisis management team convened. Senior managers listened to recorded gate and flight audio, if available, and read statements from the gate agent, from flight attendants who worked alongside Beatrice, and from customers who had already lodged complaints. The evidence was compelling and damning. One vice president looked up from the stack of reports, rubbing her temples. "We can't afford a scandal right now. We've had enough hits to our reputation. We need to act fast." The corporate ethics officer chimed in. We should place Beatrice on immediate leave pending the investigation, and we need a direct apology to Miss Johnson and her daughter. The VP nodded. Let's do it. Also, we need to make sure the entire cabin crew is reviewed, including the manager who allowed this environment to persist. We can't have any tolerance for this. Thus, the wheels were set in motion. Emails fired off, phone calls were made, and the manager overseeing Beatrice's flight team was summoned. Within hours, the entire flight crew of Delta Flight 2745 found themselves under scrutiny. Beatrice, of course, was at the center of the storm. 2 days after Ebony's flight landed, a video surfaced on TikTok. It showed the precise moment Beatrice snatched the boarding pass from Ebony's hand. The person filming must have been another passenger waiting in line at gate C21. The video captured the shock in Ebony's eyes, Margot's stunned reaction, and Beatrice's icy demeanor. In a single day, the clip reached over 2 million views. Comments poured in. This is disgusting. That attendant needs to be fired immediately. I can't believe a Delta allows people like her to wear the uniform. The teenager did nothing wrong. People are so racist, it's insane. Twitter threads lit up with calls to boycott or demand accountability from the airline, using hashtags like #JusticeForEbony, #RacismInTheskies, and #DeltaDoBetter. News outlets began picking up the story, framing it within a broader discussion of customer service and racial bias in the airline industry. A well-known podcast host mentioned it in a segment on systemic racism, urging listeners to demand better. The story ballooned, no longer a single isolated incident. Ebony tried to focus on her innovation camp, but every time she glanced at her phone, it buzzed with new messages, new requests for interviews. She felt overwhelmed. Aunt Gloria did her best to shield Ebony, telling reporters politely that Ebony was focusing on her future, not on the scandal. Meanwhile, Delta scrambled to contain the fallout. Their official social media account posted a carefully worded statement. Delta does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We are investigating an incident involving a gate agent and flight attendant on Flight 2745. We have reached out to the Johnson family and are taking immediate steps to address this unacceptable behavior. But social media users found it lacking sincerity, especially after seeing the viral video. Calls for a deeper, more thorough response grew louder. During a lull in her busy schedule at the innovation camp, Ebony found a quiet spot in the campus courtyard to call her mother. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. She took a deep breath and dialed. Delilah answered almost immediately. Hey baby, how are you holding up? Ebony pursed her lips. I'm okay. The camp is going great, but everything else feels crazy. People keep texting me about that video. I feel like I'm at the center of some big controversy. Delilah's voice softened with understanding. It's a lot to handle. I'm so proud of how strong you're being. And guess what? I've been in contact with a lawyer who specializes in discrimination suits against airlines. Ebony's stomach fluttered nervously. Are we suing them? Delilah paused. We haven't decided yet, but we're exploring our legal options, especially now that the story's gone viral. Delta is under a lot of pressure. Ebony glanced around, relieved that no one else was within earshot. I never wanted all this attention, Mom. I know, baby, Delilah said, but sometimes these moments choose us. Our family has a history of standing up for what's right. Did I ever tell you about your great-great-grandmother, Harriet? Ebony shook her head, though her mother couldn't see her. No, not really. Delilah's voice took on a reverent tone. Harriet was part of the first group of African-American women to fight for the right to vote in Georgia. She faced threats and violence, but she never stopped. She believed we should never let fear or intimidation break our spirit. I think she'd be proud of you right now. A tear slipped down Ebony's cheek. She felt a strange warmth fill her chest, as if her ancestors were gently guiding her. Thank you for telling me that, Mom. It helps. Delilah chuckled softly. We come from a line of strong women, Ebony. Don't ever doubt your strength. At Delta's Los Angeles operations office, A grim-faced HR representative handed Beatrice McAllister a letter. The words "administrative leave" stood out in bold letters. Beatrice's hands trembled as she read. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "All because of one complaint?" The HR rep maintained a professional demeanor. Multiple complaints, actually, and a viral video showing unprofessional conduct. "We have no choice but to place you on leave while we complete a thorough investigation." Beatrice's face flushed. "I've been a flight attendant for 10 years with no major incidents. This is outrageous. Who is behind this witch hunt?" The HR rep remained stoic. "Miss McAllister, the evidence is quite substantial. Our priority is to uphold the company's zero-tolerance policy on discrimination. You'll be notified if and when you can return to duty. Until then, please surrender your ID badge and uniform." Beatrice glared at him, tossing her ID on the table. "Fine," she hissed. "But you'll regret this. I'll go to the union and I'll expose all the times the airline covered for incompetent staff. You think you can pin everything on me?" The HR rep simply stood, gesturing toward the door. Beatrice snatched her purse and stormed out, tears of rage threatening to spill over. She had spent years following the airline's protocols and prided herself on discipline. Now, with one wave of public outrage, her career lay in shambles. And deep down, she knew she had been caught red-handed in a moment she couldn't spin. But the fallout didn't end with Beatrice. The manager who oversaw the flight attendant crew on Flight 2745 had ignored prior complaints about her behavior. That omission now came to light. Corporate discovered emails from Margot and other gate agents referencing Beatrice's hostility toward certain passengers, which had been glossed over. Additionally, 2 other flight attendants on the same crew had earlier faced minor complaints about ignoring black passengers' requests. Each had been brushed aside by the manager in question. With public and internal pressure mounting, Delta decided a sweeping change was necessary to restore public trust and set an example. The official memo read, "Effective immediately, the entire cabin crew assigned to Flight 2745 is placed on indefinite leave, pending retraining and reassessment. The management official who oversaw the crew has been reassigned, pending an investigation into neglected complaints. Delta stands by its zero-tolerance policy on discrimination and commits to a thorough overhaul of any management practices that enabled such behavior." Within a week, the entire team was effectively replaced. Beatrice was terminated, the manager was demoted, and the remaining flight attendants in that group were reassigned to mandatory sensitivity training, with the understanding that any further infractions would result in dismissal. Social media erupted again, this time with shock at the swift action. Comments ranged from "finally accountability" to "let's see if they follow through with changes or just scapegoat a few employees." But overall, the public sentiment was that a semblance of justice had been served. Back in Los Angeles, Ebony was wrapping up her innovation camp. She stood on stage presenting her project, a prototype for an app that tracked local community resources for underserved neighborhoods. The audience of peers and mentors gave her a standing ovation. She grinned, feeling a surge of pride and purpose. "This is why I'm here," she thought. "Not to be a symbol of someone else's prejudice, but to make a difference." After the ceremony, Ebony's phone buzzed again. Another news notification about her story, this time from a major network. They ran an editorial titled, "Standing Up at 30,000 Feet, A Teen's Fight Against Discrimination." Ebony sighed, handing the phone to Aunt Gloria. "I just want to focus on my future," she confessed. Aunt Gloria gave her a reassuring squeeze on the arm. "The world is paying attention to your story, Ebony, because it resonates with so many. You have a platform now. It's up to you how you use it." Ebony nodded slowly. "I don't want to be just a victim. I want people to see I'm more than that." Gloria smiled. "That's exactly why you should share your voice when you're ready." A week later, Ebony and her mother, Delilah, found themselves at a Delta conference room in Atlanta, a meeting set up at the airline's request. Ebony's hands felt clammy, She wore a simple blouse and skirt, trying to appear composed despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. Delilah sat beside her, quietly exuding a fierce but respectful energy. A panel of Delta executives greeted them, including the Vice President of Customer Experience and the Chief Diversity Officer. After initial pleasantries, the Chief Diversity Officer leaned forward. "Miss Johnson, Miss Ebony, we want to start by offering our deepest apologies for what you experienced. We are prepared to make amends, and we want to learn from this incident to ensure it never happens again." Delilah, ever the articulate paralegal, responded with measured firmness. "We appreciate the apology. However, we also want to see tangible policy changes, not just a statement. Ebony's experience was deeply traumatizing, an example of something that happens more often than people think." The VP nodded solemnly. "Understood. We've already terminated the flight attendant in question and disciplined the management involved. We're also implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training for all staff. Additionally, we're reviewing our complaint procedures to ensure every report is thoroughly investigated." Ebony's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "I just want to make sure no other kid goes through something like this. I was just trying to travel for a camp that meant a lot to me." The VP offered a sympathetic smile. "Your courage in coming forward has already sparked change within our organization. We'd like to offer you and your mother compensation for any distress caused, as well as complimentary flights in the future." He slid a folder across the table, detailing Delta's proposed settlement. Delilah glanced at the numbers but then looked up. "We'll have our legal counsel review these documents," she said. "Our priority is ensuring real change." The Chief Diversity Officer chimed in again. "We'd also like to invite Ebony to be part of a youth advisory panel for improving customer experience for young travelers. We think your perspective could be invaluable." Ebony felt a surge of surprise. "Really?" He nodded. "Absolutely. We want to learn from you, to make flying safer and more inclusive for everyone." As they left the meeting, Ebony and her mother walked through the halls of the Delta headquarters with a newfound sense of closure, yet also a recognition that their fight was part of a larger battle. They would continue to speak up, not just for Ebony, but for others who experienced discrimination in less publicized moments. Outside, Atlanta's heat enveloped them. Delilah took Ebony's hand. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "You turned a painful experience into a catalyst for change." Ebony smiled, tears glinting at the corners of her eyes. "I learned it from you, Mom." They had one more stop to make before heading home, visiting Harriet's old neighborhood, where Ebony's great-great-grandmother once fought for justice. Standing on the corner of a street where Harriet had marched for voting rights, Ebony felt the threads of history weaving through her. She realized that life had a way of placing you in challenging circumstances, not to break you, but to shape you into the person you were meant to become. Months later, Ebony was back at school, juggling homework, extracurriculars, and volunteer work. She had all but put the traumatic flight incident behind her, until one day the principal called her to the auditorium. "We have some visitors who'd like to speak with you," he said with a smile. Stepping onto the stage, Ebony found a small crowd of students, teachers, and community members, along with a panel from Delta Airlines, including the Chief Diversity Officer. The official cleared his throat, addressing the audience. "We are here today to honor Ebony Johnson, whose courage led to systemic changes within our company. Her willingness to speak up sparked a conversation that has impacted thousands of employees. It only took one call from her family to set this in motion, a call that reminded us of the importance of accountability." He extended a plaque toward Ebony engraved with her name, "In recognition of courage and advocacy for racial equality." The auditorium erupted in applause. Ebony accepted the award, her cheeks flaming with a mixture of pride and humility. In her short acceptance speech, Ebony said, "I hope this reminds everyone that no matter your age, your voice matters. Sometimes it just takes one call to shine a light on injustice and make a difference." Looking out at the faces before her, Ebony felt both the weight and the joy of her journey. Her mother stood in the front row, tears shining in her eyes. Aunt Gloria waved from the side, beaming. Ebony smiled, knowing that while this chapter of her life started with pain, it had bloomed into something greater than she ever imagined. Indeed, from that single call, an entire flight crew had been replaced. A company had been forced to reckon with its own shortcomings, and Ebony had discovered the power of her own voice. In the end, justice was more than a word. It was a living force that demanded action, fed by courage and guided by truth. Thank you for being part of this journey, where a single voice challenged injustice and created ripples of change. Ebony's story reminds us that nobody is too young or too powerless to stand up for what's right. When the flight attendant tried to demean a bright, eager teen, she underestimated the collective power of truth, resilience, and community. From that one phone call, a chain of accountability was set in motion, one that replaced an entire flight team and prompted a major airline to confront its policies. If this story inspired you, don't let the conversation stop here. Share it with friends, family, and colleagues, because awareness leads to action. Subscribe to our channel to keep these important stories alive, and let's continue shining a light on injustices, big or small. By coming together, we can ensure that every traveler's journey is met with dignity, respect, and equality. If you enjoyed this dramatic tale and believe in its message, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories that matter to the world. Stay tuned for our next video, and remember, every voice, every story, and every call for justice counts.